One of the real experts in the field of leadership is a Harvard professor by the name of John Kotter. And if you want to go further with your leadership studies, I'd say consider reading some of his work or watching some of his videos on his YouTube channel. It's real good stuff. But among his work, Kotter gives us perhaps the most cogent description of the difference between leadership and management. Some people think that those are the same thing and they use the terms interchangeably, but they're really not. They're two different but complementary systems of action, and it's important that we get the distinction. In a classic Harvard Business Review article entitled, "What Leaders Really Do," Kotter clarifies this for us. He writes, "Management is about coping with complexity. Without good management, complex enterprises tend to become chaotic in ways that threaten their very existence. Good management brings a degree of order and consistency to key dimensions like the quality and profitability of products. Leadership, by contrast, is about coping with change. Part of the reason it's become so important in recent years is that the business world has become more competitive and more volatile. Doing what was done yesterday, or doing it 5% better, is no longer a formula for success. Major changes are more and more necessary to survive and compete, and more change always demands more leadership." So the primary difference? He's saying reducing chaos versus increasing change. Planning and organizing and coordinating versus inspiring and motivating. They're both necessary and they go hand in hand, but they're definitely not the same. Well, okay, so what? I mean, it sounds a little like an exercise in semantics. It's not. Here's the point. If you're going to lead anywhere, a business, a school, in a classroom, a church, a sports team, a family, a nation, whatever, if you're going to lead, then you're going to have to pursue change. At least if you want to lead effectively. Leadership automatically entails change. And change toward doing things that perhaps have never been done before, or at least not that way. Change toward innovation, rather than the status quo or a mere 5% improvement. Change to get things right in the long run, not just for today or tomorrow. Peter Drucker, you're familiar with the name, right? Peter Drucker put it this way. He said, "Management is doing things right. Leadership is doing the right things." Management is doing things right. Leadership is doing the right things. Basically doing whatever is necessary to succeed in the long run. And here's the connection to courage, our topic for today. When you do that, when you try to change something, and some of you know this from firsthand experience, when you try to change something, people will come out of the woodwork to oppose you. People who have a vested interest in the status quo. People who are afraid of what the change might mean for them. People who feel that their power may be threatened by the change that you're proposing. It happens every day because real leadership, don't miss this, real leadership provokes real opposition. And that, my friends, will require real courage on your part if you're serious about making a difference. You know, it takes courage to challenge the processes that stagnate an organization, to challenge the way we've always done it. Have you heard that phrase? You know, of course you have. We all have. It's sort of the mantra of the mediocre, and it's everywhere. It takes real courage for a preacher to stand up and say things that are biblically accurate but are hard for people to hear because of how that would disrupt their life. It takes real courage for a teenager to say no to peer pressure, but in doing so, you become a role model, essentially an inspirational leader for other teens who are too scared to step out on their own. It takes real courage for a coach to call out players who are just going through the motions at practice, or for a manager to dismiss a problematic employee. You think that's easy? It's absolutely not. It takes real courage to raise kids so that they're not swept away by the culture. Courage to have a different set of standards than Johnny's mom and Susie's dad. You know, but Mom, everybody's going to that party. But Dad, everybody wears that style now. But Mom, it says the rating is PG-13, and I'm 13 now. You want to lead? Stand firm. That's the point. You got to stand firm. The leaders we've been studying these past several weeks, how courageous were they? William Wilberforce standing up to the whole British Parliament on the issue of slavery. That's courageous leadership. Nelson Mandela and Mahatma Gandhi standing up to the oppression of their day and suffering severe consequences. That's courageous leadership. Malala Yousafzai, a mere teenage girl fighting for the right to education for women, when the Taliban tried to assassinate her. Now, that's courageous leadership, even at age 14. Jesus facing down the religious leaders of his day because they were standing between people and God. That's courageous leadership on your behalf and on mine. The point that transcends all of this is that leadership entails advocating for change, and that means making some people mad, maybe a lot of people mad. So it takes courage. No courage, no leadership, period. If you get nothing else. No courage, no leadership. At least not the kind that genuinely gets results and improves people's lives. And maybe that's why the Bible says so often, be not afraid. Don't fear. It says it more than 100 times in the Old and the New Testament. God calls us to be leaders, to be influencers, to be agents of change wherever we are. And he knows that this requires courage. So he tells us repeatedly not to be afraid, to trust him, and to make a faithful decision to do what's right. The fear of man will prove to be a snare, it says in Proverbs, but whoever trusts in the Lord is kept safe. Now, bottom line, folks, courage is a cornerstone of faithful leadership. It's not the absence of fear. I mean, that's probably not even possible. But it is a conscious decision to rely on God and to go forward despite the fear.